Welcome to the Sent from Disneyland podcast.
Here age relives fond memories of the past.
If it's your first time joining us, welcome. On this podcast, we'll take a journey into the past and explore Disneyland and Disneyland history with mementos, snapshots, and postcards sent from Disneyland from 1955 to the present. The postcards from this episode will be viewable on Instagram at Sent from Disneyland or on my website, sentfromdisneyland.com. Today I'm starting off by thanking my patrons from patreon.com. You can join in and receive mail from my desk or for my trips to Disneyland. I'm currently working on some new patron benefits. Patrons can sign up for as little as $1 per month. Special thanks to Random Olive, the first patron to this podcast, and to the e-ticket patrons Tania, Eric Daniels, Monica Seitz Vega, Joe Gamble, Scott Booker, Russ Romano, Michael and Christina Cross, Mary Henderson, and Sheila Harry. C-ticket patrons Serious Inquiries Only, Debbie Weinstein, Jennifer Schneep, Ruby McDowell, Grace Coate, Scott Cagle, and Ben and Noel Bruning, B-ticket patron The Disney Rewind Podcast, and to the A-ticket patrons Elise Sharp, Zealot Infinity, Claire Voigtlander, Alexis Robles, Maggie and Henry Byers, Angelica Nablock, The All Aboard Podcast, and Ana Fiches de Lectores. I am your host, your post-host Clocky, and today we have 2 postcards sent from Disneyland. The front of our first postcard has Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs underneath the monorail track, and next to the transition from Fantasyland to Tomorrowland. On the top half of the postcard it reads, Snow White and Friends in yellow lettering, and underneath the characters it reads, Visit Disneyland. On the back it reads, Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs in the happiest land of them all, Fantasyland. Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs take time off, from work in their diamond mine, to meet new friends. It's not postmarked, and the stamp is mostly removed, but I recognize the stamp to be an 8-cent Eisenhower postage stamp, Scott number 1394. I assume they visited the park on Monday, December 29th, 1975, when park hours were from 9 a.m. to midnight. The weather was a high of 81 and a low of 41. It's addressed to a Howard Skeffington of Rough and Ready, California. It reads, Howard, as you know, this is Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs. We saw them but did not get a picture. Sorry about the writing, I'm in the car. Disneyland was fun. I've been there before. I did not go into the Haunted Mansion. Love, Sheila Harris. This week's episode is a little special. Both of these postcards likely did not make it to their addressee. Also, both postcards were inscribed by my mother, who is celebrating a milestone birthday this week. This postcard was in a family album along with a handful of photos of the family in Disneyland. Recently, I also received a shopping bag, leftover attraction tickets, and a receipt from the trip. I knew when the family visited the park based on the receipt, which is dated December 29th, 1975. The receipt is from the bookstore, which was located in the back section of the Emporium, near where most of the toys are today. The bottom of the receipt also includes a simple image of Sleeping Beauty Castle with Disneyland printed in a Gothic calligraphy font. I assume the postcards I have from this trip were 2 of the items on this receipt, which totaled $9.30. Looking through the photos, I know that the family experienced the following attractions: It's a Small World, The People Mover, Tom Sawyer Island, Mission to Mars, The Jungle Cruise, and the Mark Twain. This week, Enfield Post had a great reminder about spatial awareness when using vintage postage stamps on envelopes. I know when I go to use vintage postage, it's important to add up the postage value and then see if it fits on the postcard before gluing the postage and writing the inscription. You can head over to enfieldpost.com and explore all the different vintage stamps you can use on your next card or letter. That's ENFIELDPOST on Instagram and enfieldpost.com for your wedding and vintage postage needs. Enfield Post is the official postage stamp sponsor of the Sent from Disneyland podcast. The front of our next postcard has the colorful Latin American section of It's a Small World. You can see the geometric sun over the celebrating children. If you look closely, you can see the reflection of some of the animatronics in the waterway. On the back it reads, Latin America, in It's a Small World. It's fiesta time in colorful Latin America, where children dressed in gay native costumes gather to help guests journey down the winding 7 seaways. Bank of America presents It's a Small World, the happiest cruise that ever sailed. This postcard is also not postmarked, and the postage stamp has been completely removed. I assume they visited the park on Monday, December 29th, 1975. When park hours were from 9 a.m. to midnight, the weather was a high of 81 and a low of 41. It's addressed to Jim McDonald of Sacramento, California. It reads, Jim, this Donald Duck picture matches your keychain. As you, we went to Disneyland and had fun, and I did not go in Haunted Mansion because I was too scared to. Well, I have to go now. Bye, Sheila Harris. So for this postcard, I'm going to tell some funny stories. I asked my family about the intended recipients of these postcards. Howard from the first postcard was just a friend who they knew from swim meets and diving competitions. Jim from the second postcard was an ex-boyfriend of my mom's eldest sister. The one thing my aunts and grandmother remember the most about him was his late 1960s Mercury Cougar. My grandmother was also pretty certain that she and my grandfather, both photographers, took Jim's wedding photos in the 1980s. As mentioned on this postcard, my mother does not enjoy being scared and avoids movies or theme park attractions that are scary. Don't worry, she has been on the Haunted Mansion since the 1970s. The first time we visited Walt Disney World, I convinced her to ride the Great Movie Ride in, at that time, MGM Studios. The attraction starts with a tour guide taking guests through iconic scenes of classic films and genres, starting with films like Mary Poppins and Singing in the Rain. Like most Florida attractions, something goes wrong, and the ride vehicle is either taken over by a 1930s gangster by the name of Muggsy or a Western bank robber, either Kid Carson or Kate Durango, depending on which vehicle you're on. The scary part happens next. My mother was aware of the sci-fi section of the attraction and hid when we entered the alien scene. The cast member playing Muggsy saw that she was scared, and I took the opportunity to make it even worse by wetting my finger and touching the back of her head, as if the alien had dropped from the ceiling and was getting ready to feed. Muggsy witnessed this prank and almost fell out of character. Ever since then, my mother is hesitant to sit next to me on potentially scary attractions. This incoming postcard is sponsored by the Art Throwdown. Art Throwdown, or ATD, is an online craft hour on Instagram, starting at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 Pacific. This week, I was able to catch some of Monday's ATD that's hosted by paper artist Russ Romano, and was co-hosted by Allison, who was an originator of the Art Throwdown. Allison has been busy, and it was nice to see her pop in and talk about catching up with mail. It was a good reminder to post about incoming mail, even if it's a little delayed. Each host brings something a little different to each show. I'll list some of the regular hosts, or you can follow Russ Romano 2021 on Instagram. The front of my incoming postcard is an artist rendering of Huey, Dewey, and Louie riding in a flying pirate ship on Peter Pan's flight, with Tinker Bell leading the way from London to the second star to the right. On the back it reads, "You can fly. Tinker Bell guides Huey, Dewey, and Louie high above London towards the enchanted Isle of Never Never Land. The young at heart can share in this adventure on Peter Pan's flight." It's postmarked March 23, 2022, with a Carroll Stream, Illinois cancel, and 2 20-cent stamps, one Hawthorne stamp, Scott number 2047, and one Barrymore Performing Arts stamp, Scott number 2012. It reads, 3/22/22. Greetings from Chicago. I got this card from a postcard and paper show a few months back, and it's from the year I was born. I feel pretty good passing it on to you. I've never been to Disney. It was something we were considering, but then COVID hit. Best, Amanda. Thank you so much for the postcard, Amanda. It was funny to receive this postcard about a postcard and paper show near Chicago the Monday after returning from a postcard and paper show in San Francisco. While I was at the show, I ran into Jim, who is a regular host on the Art Throwdown, looking for local vintage postcards to send out as post-crossing postcards. While I was there, I picked up some vintage Disneyland postcards for the podcast, a few vintage photos, and a 1972 map. Thanks for listening to Sent from Disneyland. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and tell your friends. It would be awesome to share your favorite episode. There are over 100 episodes to choose from. It would also help to leave a 5-star rating and comment at whatever podcast platform you use. If you'd like to support the show financially, please check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/SentFromDisneyland. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Sent From Disneyland, or on Twitter at Sent From Disney. For questions and comments, send me a postcard addressed to Sent From Disneyland, P.O. Box 44, Hood, California, 95639. This podcast is not affiliated with Disney, the United States Postal Service, or any post office or Disney properties. Opinions expressed on this podcast belong to its host and guests of the Sent from Disneyland podcast.